we're going to have 2 or possibly 3 different methods for algebraically solving a quadratic equation. But this one, solving quadratic equations by factoring, is probably the one that you will use most often. First, we need to be able to figure out these simple equations. 3 times something equals 0. And what's the something? 0. Something times 6 equals 0. What's the something? And also 0 times 1 equals 0. And that's pretty simple, right? But the fact that those are all zeros is related to the zero product property, which is important to be able to solve quadratic equations by factoring. The zero product property states that if the product of 2 real numbers is 0, then one or both of the factors must be 0. So if you have 2 things multiplied together and they multiply to give you 0, one or both of those things has to be equal to 0. Now that zero product property probably seems pretty straightforward and like something you already knew, but it is the main idea that allows us to solve a quadratic equation by factoring. So if we look at this one, x plus 3 times x minus 2 equals 0. If we apply the zero product property to that, then what would x plus 3 equal? Or x minus 2, one or both of them has to equal 0. Because those are 2 factors. 2 things multiplied together and they equal 0, so one or both of those has to equal 0. And if x plus 3 equals 0, then what does x equal? -3, right. So subtract 3 from both sides to solve for x. X equals -3. And if x minus 2 equals 0, then what does x equal? 2. Add 2 to both sides. X equals 2. That x plus 3 times x minus 2 equals 0 is a quadratic equation. If we were to graph the related equation like we did the other day, we'd get this, where you can see that the solutions are -3 and 2. But using the zero product property, we don't have to graph it. We can come to the solutions when it's in factored form. So now we have something like this. 3x squared equals 2x plus 5. Still a quadratic equation, but it's not in factored form. And it's not even in standard form. So you can see on the right there the steps. To solve a quadratic by factoring, number 1, simplify to put it in standard form. Which really just means I'm going to put everything on one side of the equation and leave 0 on the other. This is going to become 3x squared minus 2x minus 5 equals 0. That's the standard form, equals 0. And the reason we want to be able to do that is so that we can apply that zero product property. If we can take the part on the left, the 3x squared minus 2x minus 5, and put it in factored form, then we'll be able to say that those 2 factors could be equal to 0. So the first step is put it in factored form or make it equal to 0. And then the second step is to factor. So we're going to factor 3x squared minus 2x minus 5. It factors to 3x, let's see, plus, no, minus 5, and x plus 1. Is that what you got when you factored it? Yeah. The third step is apply the zero product property to find the solutions. And so the zero product property says if those 2 things are multiplied together and it equals 0, then one or both of those factors is equal to 0. So we can take 3x minus 5 equals 0, and we take x plus 1 equals 0, and now we have just 2 small linear equations to solve, which you already know how to solve, to find out what x is. So the first one, 3x minus 5 equals 0, we'll add 5 to both sides, so we get 3x equals 5. That was just plus 5, plus 5. And then divide by 3, so we get x equals 5 over 3. There's one solution. And the other solution, all you need to do is subtract 1 from both sides and get x equals -1. Taking a quick look at the graph, you can see that those solutions are there on the graph. -1 and 1.667, which is equal to 5/3. That's a good way to check your answers if you want to do a check. There are two easy ways to check your answer. Graph it and see what the solutions are, or fill the x value into the original equation. Both sides should equal out to the same thing. And you'd have to check both of them.